Now, I know I've probably said this before, but I think this week's wood that I turned is probably the prettiest wood I've ever turned. But this time I mean it. I had done a video on this earlier. Hopefully I can find it. Probably one of the more beautiful pieces of wood I've ever had. It is a root burl. And I roughed it out and I put some anchor seal on it. And it's dried for a year. You can see here it's going to have this bark inclusion. I'm going to leave it. So I'm not going to take a whole lot more off the inside because I want this to stay. I'm just going to smooth it out, possibly. I'll see how that goes. But I do have to thin the walls down, so I'm probably going to take it off the outside because I want to leave this as much as I can. Now, if you look really close on the left-hand side on my chuck, you'll see that I have this enclosed vessel mounted in my chuck on a tenon. It wasn't real secure, and I do end up changing it later just because, again, it wasn't real secure. It wasn't so much because the tenon had gone out of round, but the surface on which the top of the chuck would be mounted against had gotten unlevel. And I didn't know if I had enough material to try and straighten that out. So that's why I decided to go with the glue block. And here I am just putting the glue block. You can see the glue block is on now. So that's sitting inside the area where the tenon would have been. I had a mortise there and I removed the tenon and then just mounted the glue block. A glue block is by far the best way, next to a screw, the best way to mount a piece of wood on the lathe. So in this position, I'm just going to work the bottom, which is going to be difficult otherwise to get. So I just get it as smooth as I can on the bottom now before turning it around. So how it's mounted currently is the opening of the enclosed vessel is big enough that it fits just over top of my chuck and I can bottom out, and then I just have my chuck in expansion mode. Now this wood is very, very hard. It's dry, and I'm using a combination here of my bowl gouge as well as my carbide scrapers. But again, this wood is very, very hard. One of the advantages of that is you do end up getting a very smooth surface right off the tool. The disadvantage, of course, is that it's slow going. Now that the bottom is cleaned up fairly well, I'm going to turn it around and hold it on this tenon. Sometimes when you remount, you do have to true things back up again, although this was really good. And that's because I mounted the tenon and turned the tenon while the bowl was mounted on the other end. So I was able to get it pretty centered even when I turned it around. And now I'm just cleaning the top up, just refining the general overall shape. Whenever you put it in the chuck, you should always go back and tighten it after just a minute or so, just to make sure it hasn't loosened up. Let's talk a little bit about speed. So with this piece, I wasn't getting a smooth surface up here near the top, and I was going about 650 RPM, and I was starting to vibrate. So let's try that. That's 400. That's 600. That's 700. I'm starting to vibrate. There's 800. I'm vibrating a lot, like too much to work. There's 1200. Sometimes you can get frequencies that if you speed up, you actually go through them. There's 1300. Let's take a look at the cut. So at the higher speeds, you will cut faster, but more importantly, you're going to get a much smoother surface. The other thing is, if there's any irregularities, as this piece does have, higher speeds help you to skip over those so that you don't bounce. So that there, I mean, I can scrape a little bit, but that's sandable. It is a fine, fine surface, and I'm round now, and yeah, that's a very, very good surface. I would not have got that surface, especially that easily, at 600 RPM. So sometimes you just gotta work your way through it. It's all about harmonics and frequencies. The faster you can go, the better surface you're gonna get. Now I was doing a very, very light pass there because I was just doing a surface treatment. It was not changing shape. It was just to get that surface right there, which is glass. There's a little ridge right there, but I mean right here, that's smooth as, that's very, very smooth. Right there, it's as smooth as sanding my first grit. So, and that's right off the tool. And I can do another pass and probably get it even better. So now let's work the bottom, do the same thing. But yeah, that's just shows you the significance of speed. So here I'm just using my bowl gouge, going over the outside, making very, very light passes. You can see the shavings that are coming off. This wood is very, very hard. I stop every once in a while just to check my progress and make sure that that bark inclusion there around the center is still solid and in place. And it is. Now I've switched to my carbide tool. So I did switch back and forth. My carbide tool did a bit better job at removing some of the ridges that were left behind from my bowl gouge. But I'm doing it very, very lightly and just watching those lines and just going over them enough to make sure that they disappear. I've talked about this on other videos, but now that I've got the outside where I want it to be, I'm just going over it with my negative rake scraper, and that does do a good job, again, at removing any lines that might still be there. There, that is now ready to sand. That's a really good surface. I want to do that now because I've already cleaned up a little bit on the inside. I'm starting to get a bit thinner, so I want to get the outside done because what will happen is it'll flex as it spins. And I do have this opening here. And this is bark, so there's no strength right here. So I've got wood here and there's a crack down here. So I want to get the outside finished and then we'll switch to the inside. I'll do some scraping on the bottom as well. And I'm liking the overall shape as well. got a little bit of a ridge right there. I might just hit that again. I want to take a second and show you the cracks that have developed in this. They're beautiful. They add a lot of character to this piece. And they're not a normal crack. They're just an opening around the burl pattern. And I really think it accentuates the overall pattern of the wood. With the exception of this one, that's from the bark inclusion. And that's a more normal looking crack. But again, because I'm not filling them, any of them, then I'm not touching this one either. I apologize. I've been working on the inside and there's not much to see. Even if I put my camera down on this end, I'm blocking the opening all the time. So I've just been passing my carbide tool. I've been passing my carbide tool down the inside here and hollowing it out. I'm fairly uniform and I've got an opening here so I can see how thick I am. I've got a little more to go just in this area right here, but down to here I'm pretty good. And it's pretty smooth in there too as well. You know, I could probably at the end just do a couple fine cuts, just finishing cuts. But I'm in good shape, I think. Just again, a little more in this area. I'll do one pass here so you can see, again, even though there's not much to see. This bowl is about as deep as I would want to do without my hollowing jig. Just because if you get too much cantilevered over the end of this, now that would be the absolute max there, but even before I get there, that's getting a little too far. Like I say, this is about the max depth that I'd want to do without my hollowing jig. I'm going to stop here for now and probably apply the finish on the outside. What I don't know is how much further I'm going to go before this crack here, this crack here gets exposed onto the inside. This one looks fairly deep, so it may start popping out. Actually, I can feel it now. It's not opened up, but I can feel it. So it's getting there for sure. Because of what I explained earlier about a tool going in deep and it will vibrate because it's cantilevered too far, the other danger is that you can get a catch. And you get a catch because the tip of the tool dips below the center line. So I've switched to my hollowing jig, and with the hollowing jig, it's, for all intents and purposes, impossible for the tip to dip down. It's supported, you can see the arm in the back, so that all helps maintain the cutting surface at the center line or higher. Again, you do not want to dip down below the center line, and that's because that's when you'll get a catch. And it's also giving me a much smoother surface as well, just because the cutter itself is much more stable. So I'll stop occasionally, blow the inside out to make sure that I don't have any shavings in there, and then just do a thickness check as well. But my hollowing jig is working very, very well. If you're interested, I do have a video that gives a little more detail on this jig itself. This is one I got made up at a local machine shop after I saw some designs online that I liked. I'm not currently using my laser pointer, so it's just pushed off to the side, just because it's shallow and I can just use my fingers to tell the thickness of it. I just want to take a look and show you what the inside of the vessel looks like. You can see that opening there in the bark. And if you look at the very, very bottom, there is a little bit of a nub here at the very center that I have to remove. But overall, the surface inside this is very, very smooth. I don't know if you can tell, but that is shiny like glass. That's probably, I would say it's one of the best finishes I've seen in a while, except there's no finish on it. That is just sanded. And it's sanded to 3000 grit. And now I'm just going to apply a tung oil. And the reason I'm going with a tung oil is because of this. I can't put a friction finish on something that's got roughness like this to it. So I think tung oil will be a really nice alternative because it will soak into that bark and make for a very nice finish. So I'm just applying it here very liberally, let it dry for a few minutes, and then I'm going to wipe it off. Any excess, that is. But very pleased with the way this is turning out. It's got a nice gloss to it, for sure. And that tung oil is bringing out the character in the wood. I want to really make sure I get down in those cracks. Let the oil soak right in.